You are listening to the Brand Architect Podcast, and this is your host, Ani Alexander.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the Brand Architect Podcast. It's me, Ani Alexander, and as always, I'm super grateful that you've tuned in to listen to the podcast, that you have decided to spend the upcoming 40 minutes with me and my guest. I really appreciate every single one of you. Thanks for tuning in. As to today's interview. Today I have a special interview because I'm going to tell you a story, a very inspirational story of how a strong brand was born and how it became a movement and very strong community worldwide. It's a very inspirational story. It's a non-standard one. I hope that by listening to it, you will realize that things don't work just one way. There is no one right way of building brands, of doing things. And sometimes when you do just maybe even the opposite of what all the well-known gurus are telling you, you may get even better results. So let's dive in, let's meet my guest and listen to the interview, and hopefully it will inspire you to do great things. Hello everyone, and welcome to the Brand Architect Podcast. It's me again, Ani Alexander, and today I'm talking to Jacob Nordby. Jacob Nordby is a storyteller, thinker, and adventure seeker whose many guests have led him to deep fascination with life in all of its weird splendor. So he has written the award-winning novel The Divine Arsonist and non-fiction title Blessed Are the Weird, a manifesto for creatives. He's the founder of the independent Manifesto Publishing House. He lives in Boise, Idaho. Did I pronounce that correct?
Yeah, Boise.
Okay, yeah, that was the French influence. Boise, Idaho, where he is now actively plotting new novels. So, obviously we are very close in terms of writing books and novels and being involved in publishing. So let's get from there. I mean, how did you end up there? How did you end up writing novels and eventually doing what you're doing now?
Well, Ani, it's interesting. All of my life, in fact, I think one of the very first things I really knew that I wanted to do and told my parents when I was a young boy was I want to be a writer. And I can still remember going out into the living room and telling them that. And, that was after I want to be a cowboy and I want to be a spy or whatever. But when it came to something that really rang a bell in me, that was 10 years old. And I said, this is what I want to do. And then, over the next couple of decades, I realized, or I thought that I realized, you can't make a living as a writer. You can't, all these things. And so I took the path of business and became an entrepreneur, and I started several companies and, found myself way deep into these enterprises and woke up at age 34, 240 pounds, completely stressed out, had this big enterprise that looked from the outside extremely successful, but in reality, my inner self, I knew that I was way off track. I ended up having a shamanic experience right about that time that I didn't even know what it was. I didn't know what it was before it happened. And that really cracked everything open. I just thought it was a meditation retreat. It turned out to be this really powerful shamanic weekend retreat. And I came back from that and began to look at my life very deeply. And this was 2007. And realized, okay, I don't know what to do about this because I have, many obligations. And I'm not just going to walk away from this, but I know that I have to somehow begin to move my life more and more toward my true calling, my true nature. But I had no idea how to do that. Fast forward just a little bit to 2008 when the whole world had a financial crisis, and that kind of forced the play where I no longer had much of a choice. There was just too much debt and the businesses capsized, and I found myself after I moved from Boise, Idaho here, which is where I had built these companies, I moved to Austin, Texas with nothing but my then wife and 3 children, and didn't know anyone, didn't have a job. I found myself down there, and just because I felt that I needed to start needed to start from scratch in a new environment and just see where it led me. Ended up having 3 part-time jobs, and I began writing my first book in a warehouse down there, which was one of my jobs. And I was sitting there waiting for orders to come in, and in between orders, I would sit there and write. And I didn't know how to write. I hadn't, been writing very much before then, but I had just started writing. And, then during that time while I was in Austin, I also met a good friend and my employer, Randy Davila, who's the CEO of Hampton Roads Publishing House and another label, Hierophant Publishing, which is where I'm a marketing director. And after I came home from Austin back to Boise, he called and offered me a job in the traditional publishing world. So I've been working for him alongside my indie publishing efforts and writing efforts, for the last several years. And it's like getting paid to learn. It's like getting paid to have a college degree. So that's the nutshell of kind of what happened. There was a lot more, and it was not very tidy and not elegant, and all sorts of ups and downs throughout that path. But that's the short story.
Okay, so basically interesting because the common thing I'm getting from my guests usually is they say that, I had no idea that I would become a writer. You told like completely the opposite. So you were from the few who actually knew that you wanted to be a writer, and eventually that's how it turned out to be when you were just 10 years old, you said?
Yeah, and I grew up, Ani, without television. I grew up in a religious cult that was extremely controlling, and so we didn't have any television, any input, any video games, no movies. I didn't see any of those until I was, in my mid-20s.
Which maybe was a good thing.
It was absolutely a good. I mean, really, I look back at it was such a gift. And so I was in love with books. I was in love with writers. I was in love with the classics at a very young age. So yeah, but I didn't know how I was going to do it, and I didn't think I was good enough. Let's just be clear about that.
I mean, it's we all start somewhere, so I don't think anyone knew it from the very beginning. So interesting. So basically, you said something that I guess many of us thought, and many parents warned their children about this idea that you can't make money with writing. So therefore you pursued something which you left afterwards because you realized that it's not your path. So do you still believe in that idea of that people can't make money with writing?
Well, I mean, obviously, there are many, many writers in the world making a full-time living at it. I feel that the explosion of self-publishing and the disintegration of the long-standing traditional publishing model has left it a much more challenging path. And even before the traditional publishing world fell apart, as it has. It wasn't like everyone who got published was making a living, and so there's a great myth. Many of the old writers, Thoreau and Walt Whitman, and different ones who we look to with such reverence, we don't realize that most of them didn't actually earn. I mean, many of their books didn't sell very well when they were alive, and so that's the funny thing is the answer is no. I believe and I know for sure that we can absolutely make a living as writers. I feel strongly that most people try to jump out too quickly. And there's all this buzz about people who, wrote a couple of books and, got them out there on Amazon and suddenly they were millionaires. And there's a lot of people who believe that. And there are also a lot of, really fraudulent online courses teaching people that they can write a bestseller in 90 days. And I don't know how your show handles profanity, but I have some very profane things to say about those myths.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's very misleading, and what I always tell is, yes, you can write a book in 90 days, but you can't write a good book in 90 days. So that's the big difference. So it can even be a bestseller, because bestseller is a book which sells a lot, but it doesn't mean that it's the best book out there. So, there are loads of things about self-publishing that is very good, but at the same time, with this low barrier, you you end up with books written in 90 days or even a week. Like now, these online courses compete with each other and they start reducing the time frame of writing the book. So basically, yes, you can, but then, it's another question what kind of book you will end up with, obviously. Okay, so it's interesting. Let's talk about this part. I mean, I didn't really realize about this before, but you ended up doing business and founding enterprises, and then you moved into the creative field and writing and publishing. Now, the tendency I'm seeing these days is just the opposite. You end up having writers who start making income by self-publishing their books and marketing their books, and then they end up, building a business, an online business, by teaching other authors how to do that, or coming up with something else. So, since you were going the opposite direction, how did that feel, and how smooth was? I mean, I'm sure the transition wasn't smooth. So, how was it?
Well, I didn't leave my businesses to become a writer. I just left because I knew that I had to follow the call of soul, the call of my heart in some way. And it wasn't elegant. It wasn't smooth in the least. I lost everything and had to start over. I mean, that's the least elegant way of saying it, and it's true. And what's interesting too is I actually do teach writers. I have a course that's getting ready to start shortly called Creative on Boot Camp, and it has people from all over the world in it, and I love it and do it once or so a year. And when I teach writers, I say, we have to be willing to find the quality, find the true voice. Not put it under financial pressure, not put it under the pressure of how is this going to make me successful. If it's true, if it rings clearly, like Nietzsche said, whatever is written in blood is going to be given a soul, something like that. I'm paraphrasing, but basically, I'm looking for let's be patient enough with the inner voice that whatever it is we're writing will have that true ring in the world. And then it won't sound like anyone else because, we don't have to go looking for an authentic voice. We have to go looking for our own voice, and that will be authentic. It'll be original. And I feel that too many people, because of the age of social media and social media celebrity, they're looking to get verified on Twitter and Instagram and have hundreds of thousands of followers, and they feel that will somehow validate the fact that they have done something real. And my personal feeling is, rather than put the writing under the kind of commercial pressure or the success pressure, celebrity pressure, let's be willing to take the time with that and be willing to, I tell my students, I worked 3 part-time jobs the entire time I was writing my first novel. I have a day job now, along with writing and along with working in the indie publishing world. So this is a labor of love for me, and it's just now really starting to pay off financially. And I'm really excited about that, and I'm willing to let it become a full-time thing. But I have zero shame in saying, yes, I have other ways of earning money. And if I were to go out there and say I'm a best-selling author and then have this whole sham about it, I just feel like that's a recipe for long-term failure.
Oh yeah, I see what you mean. So basically, that is something that we don't talk a lot about, is how much time and effort does all this require, because many end up looking for a quick fix and magic button to push and have everything done.
Agreed.
So, but obviously, when it takes so much time, usually we don't really have the motivation that keeps us go until when we see any kind of results. So what kept you moving?
Well, what kept me moving, Ani, was I had lived a life up until that point that was not my own. And that had exhausted me. And so when I began to write and began to explore into the true call of my own heart, I realized I had this great fear of going back to anything that was fake, anything that was too heavy because it wasn't my own. And when I wrote those words, "Blessed are the weird people," the poets and misfits and mystics and painters and troubadours, and heretics is in there somewhere, for they teach us to see the world through different eyes. I wrote those on the back of an envelope in my car. I pulled over beside the road and wrote those because they came through, because I had always felt like a misfit wearing conventional clothing. And when I wrote those words and then began to follow that, like, what does this mean? And then I shared them and it became a viral hit. And I had no idea. That there were more of me out there, that there were more people who wanted to follow something real and find out what was real. And they probably weren't the people like me. They didn't have, piercings and tattoos and purple hair, so they weren't obviously weird, most of them, the ones who this has attracted. Most of them were searching for what was real, and didn't know how to express it or find it inside of their conventional lives. And you have all these people out there waving their arms and, blowing these trumpets saying, be authentic, and look at me. And I'm, I do yoga on the beach and all these, and it's wonderful, right? It's wonderful. But a lot of people say, well, I'll never get there. I'll never be that real or authentic. So I guess I just have to get back in my cubicle and do my thing. And they, from my perspective, Ani, the spirit slowly dies. It's like watching a candle burn out and die. And that's what breaks my heart. It broke my heart about myself. It breaks my heart to watch it in other people, because it's totally possible to find what's true inside and express it. And I had a friend who's quite a successful author come up here for a visit to Idaho. We went up way in the mountains, and we were driving home, and he said, Jacob, what does it take to create a movement? And my first reaction, it was almost like an allergic response, was like this: you don't create a movement. You move in the direction of what is true for you, and that energy, that direction, that attracts. That's an energetic, magnetic attraction. Like, people feel that, and those who ring true with the direction you are going, they move with you, and then a movement happens. But you don't sit down and say, well, here, like in some branding boardroom, you don't sit down and get on a whiteboard and say, we're going to create a movement like this, and this is how we're going to make a viral movement. No, that's complete. Again, profanity inserted here. That's complete bunk, because those are artificial, and so I don't believe in anything that is contrived when it comes to finding out what's true inside, or even attracting others to join us in that. I feel strongly it needs to be absolutely ruggedly individual, and then if I move in the direction where my heart is calling me, then it's going to bring other people with me, and I don't have to worry about the numbers at all, because the people who are supposed to join me on that expedition are going to show up. They just do.
Okay, so can we say that this whole thing started from those words that you wrote on the back of the envelope, and it turned into a book, and then it turned into a movement and tribe? Is that right?
Agreed. Yeah, I can't. And what's interesting is I wrote it absolutely for myself. I didn't have any idea that it would catch on out there. I had no idea. I'd written many other things that I thought were kind of good. That one I didn't even know. It just came out from this place, Ani, and I had no idea that it would be shared millions and millions and millions of times.
So where did you post it? Was it on social media the first time that it went
Yeah,
viral?
I think I put it on Facebook or something, and then it took off, and then different people began making their own versions of it, and yeah, yes.
Okay, so basically it wasn't planned. It became a brand by itself based on the reaction and based on the fact that it went viral. So once the process started and it did actually go viral, what did you do? I mean, once you saw that the process started, what were your next steps?
Well, let's see. That's a great question. Again, because I didn't plan it, I didn't really have a plan after it began to catch on. So I started a Facebook page for it. I bought the web, the URL, blessedaretheweird.com. At least I had that, and I pointed it to a sub page on my main website at the time. And I just really kind of let it sit there, and it just kept going and going. And the Facebook page, began to grow a bit. And again, I didn't push it, I didn't advertise, I didn't, do really anything, and just kind of let it happen as it happened. And I began sharing then on there and sharing things that were important to me. And over time, I tried to walk away from it a number of times, Ani. I really thought, you know what, this has run its course. There's nothing much left here. I was changing too. I was moving through the process of a divorce, and I was taking care of kids, and I was working, and I was doing all these things. So I just didn't know. It wasn't like I realized, okay, I have this nugget, and I have to hang on to it no matter what, and it's going to turn into something. I just kept going. Well, I don't know it. It won't seem to die on its own, and it keeps seeming to come back and find me and not let me alone. And because I'd be going along for weeks or months and nothing happening, and then friends on Facebook would tag me and say, hey, this huge spirit science web Facebook page has just posted their own version of Blessed Are the Weird, and they would tag me in it, and so I'd see that like, oh wow, it'd have thousands and thousands of shares. The artist Prince posted on his Twitter feed a year or so ago. Yeah, and Elizabeth Gilbert has. I mean, many different people have shared this because it resonated with them. And again, I don't know those people. It's not like we're friends or anything. It kept not leaving me alone. And so I started writing back in 2013. I started writing the book, and I wasn't happy at all with the first draft. And then so I wrote a second draft and then a third. I think I wrote 6 different drafts of the book before the final version that's out now.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah. I wasn't sure. I kept not being sure if there was going to be anything left in it worth sharing with the world, Ani. I really didn't, and that's why I kind of handed it to the world after it was done, and I've just felt like, all right, if there's something in it for you, then please, with pleasure, I offer it to you. And so when I get notes from people and they say this is life changing or this speaks to me or whatever they might say, I take those words with tremendous humility and with gratitude, because I honestly didn't know that there was that left in there at all.
Oh, I see. Well, many writers who already have communities and tribes behind, they sort of engage the community while they are writing their drafts and sharing pieces and getting feedback. Did you do that?
Yes, I did. And what's interesting is, so I would share little clips and pieces from it, and I was sharing along the way different ideas that eventually made it into the book. So the answer is yes. And I also noticed in myself this interesting addiction to the quick response, Ani. So I would write a little piece and share it on Instagram and Facebook, and it would get hundreds of likes or thousands of likes or whatever it might. And I began to notice that was starting to replace the long-term nourishment payoff of actually finishing a book. And so there came a point when I really slowed that down and began to go inward and ask what really is trying to happen in this book. And I had to discipline myself to not keep sharing along the way. So there's an interesting balance there, because on one side, absolutely, I did share many of the things, and those things ended up making it into the book. But I also had to learn to kind of pull back from the addiction of that. I need the dopamine rush of getting a bunch of immediate likes and shares. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. It does. So basically, what was the community? I mean, they gathered together around this idea, and what type of community is it? So what are these people doing in the group?
I'm not sure I understand the question. What do you mean? What are they doing?
Is it a community of like-minded people who just share their ideas and their writings, or what is the main thing that keeps them together apart from the ideology?
I see what you're saying. Okay. Well, that's a good question. It's been a very loose tribe. It's worldwide. It's on Facebook primarily, but also now on Instagram and Tumblr. I'll find different things like that floating around different places. So there's no formal tribal meeting place. I'd say the Facebook group or the Facebook page, Blessed Are the Weird, just the official page, is probably the place most people show up when they do. And you know what? That's actually a very interesting question, because up till now it's been more of a far-flung virtual community. I'm actually planning some events to become sort of a hybrid music festival / creative workshop type festival where it brings people together in a more physical way, and I'm really excited to watch it come sort of out of the shadows of Facebook and Twitter and places like that, and actually meet in person, because I feel like that will deepen the experience for people in a whole new way.
Oh, absolutely. I'm sure it will. I'm absolutely certain about this. So when you finished your book, how did you, I presume you self-published it?
Well, good question. So I self-published the first one for sure. The second one, I actually decided to found my own independent publishing house, so a corporation to house it. And I'll eventually publish other people's books as well on a very selective sort of invitation basis. So the answer is yes. I suppose you could say it's self-published, but in reality, I've just adopted, the rules of the new publishing world and started my own publishing company for this book. So it's under the name Manifesto Publishing House.
Okay, I see. So were you like all the other writers, because you mentioned that you didn't pay attention to numbers and follows, and that's not as important as it should be. So basically, you were, once it went out, were you tracking the sales numbers? Were you looking at what's happening with the book, or you just had it out and you were happy that it was done?
How many times a day can you refresh Amazon to see if you have a new review?
Okay, so you were just like me. I see.
Are you kidding me? I'm totally human. Absolutely. No, and how many times can you go check KDP to see how many new Kindles have sold? I mean, yeah, no, absolutely. I'm totally interested in numbers, and it makes a difference to me. And yeah, and I also like to eat and pay my bills, and so it's fun to see something start to take off. I'm no purist here, Ani.
So did it meet your expectations? The results?
Actually has been exceeding. I mean, it's only been out now since, I kind of barely leaked it in September, and then it's been in sort of a soft launch since then. I have some PR work and, different appearances being planned right now. So I'll be doing more of a formal launch going into the next few months. But yeah, I mean, I'm kind of blown away actually with the response so far. I mean, in terms of sales numbers, and also reviews, it's on Amazon right now. It's at 50 reviews as of a couple days ago, and so I'm just thrilled. I'm overjoyed at the fact that it's growing legs, and I've had several people, I mean, really quite a few people in the last couple of months get a hold of me and purchase crates of the books to give out, like 20 or 30 at a time. And I see the activity where people are recommending it to their friends, or people are saying my friend recommended this. So my heart is just kind of exploding right now with gratitude to watch that it's not just my efforts out there in advertising and trying to market to the social media networks and things like that, or an email list. I certainly do those things, but I'm really excited to see that this one is growing legs. It's actually taking off well beyond anything I could do for it.
Okay, so what did you do exactly? What were your plans, and what kind of marketing did you do for this book launch?
Well, I think the marketing, and again, I'm only now into more of the formal launch, where getting radio interviews and doing some of the more traditional things like bookstore appearances. So that's just now sort of happening. Previous to this, I really just went back to the tribe. I went back to my email list, which is not massive, a few thousand. But I went back to the Facebook tribe, and I do have pretty strong numbers there. So around 69,000 on my page, and I've got an author page with 25,000. My own personal, with quite a few. And so I went back to them, and I just said, the new book is here, and please enjoy. And honestly, that was that was about the extent of it at first. And then I do run Facebook ads. I do collect specific custom audiences and then offer the book to them. Running to Amazon, I do run Amazon ads. I did a Goodreads giveaway. I did one specific to the U.S. and one to some international countries, which has really helped. So yeah, those are some of the things. And so definitely I feel like it's kind of my duty to be responsible with the book and keep offering it out there. And the other thing that I've done, Ani, that has been really useful is I've shared this book with influencers. So, people who I know are likely to be interested in the message of the book, or in some cases, I actually quoted them in the book. I would actually, Seth Godin is a good example of this. I asked his permission to use some of his quotes from tribes. He responded to me in 5 minutes. I couldn't believe it. Gave me permission. He was totally classy. And then after the book was published, I sent him a note and just said, I would really love to share this book with you. Once again, in 5 minutes, I get, here's this massively successful international speaker and author. And he wrote back to me immediately and said, yes, I'd love to have a copy of your book. Now, I didn't ask him for an endorsement. I didn't ask him to do anything publicly, and he hasn't. But he was so gracious and amazing. But I've asked many other people since then, if I could send them a copy. And there have been some amazing people who have received a copy, taken a picture of it, put it on Instagram, put it on Twitter. My friend Paul Boynton, who's the author of Begin With Yes, who, by the way, you should have on your show someday. My God, he's built an online tribe. His Facebook fan page has more fans than Eckhart Tolle or Hillary Clinton at one point. He's an amazing, positive guy. Begin With Yes, yeah. Self-published success. Amazing. But he's shared my book, and that made a huge difference. A guy named Scott Stabill, who's also another amazing author. He has a huge fan base, so he also has shared pictures of himself with my book, and those things made a major difference. So I found that being really generous with the book and not going out and saying, okay, I'm going to send you a book and I'm going to need a review or an endorsement, just sending it. And then, the fact that it resonated with them and they were willing, out of the goodness of their heart and out of excitement over the book itself, they shared it, and that's made a major difference in the sales numbers. Oh, and Araya House, Araya Mountain Dreamer, is one of my favorite people. She's been kind enough to share about the book and to write me an endorsement. So those are some of the things that I've done, and I haven't put it under, Ani, I'm a marketing director for a traditional publishing company, so I know what the usual PR buildup is on a book, and I haven't really done that. It's been a much more sort of casual launch, but you can see you can connect the dots. Some of the things I've done have definitely been part of what might be considered a sort of thought out plan, at least.
Yeah, and much better than the traditional PR campaigns, I presume, in terms of results as well.
I haven't been upset with it, but to be fair, I also hired a PR lady, and she is helping me put together, more traditional type work. So I'm kind of really trying to do everything I can with this one to be responsible with the message,
Okay, I see. So let's sort of tackle the brand side of it. The tribe and the book and everything you've done is under the brand name Blessed Are the Weird. So why that choice? Why did you choose that as opposed to the personal brand of Jacob Nordby?
Well, that's a good question, and it goes right to the heart of what's going on here, and that is I have always felt like I'm not really the owner of these words. Like I was given them to give to the world. They came through my personality and my mind and my voice, yes. So they are unique in that way. But the words and the idea are bigger than my personality. And I've always needed to sort of be humble with that. And yes, I get recognition, I get money, I get a lot of nice things from being the carrier of those words. But honestly, it's not about those things. I feel very strongly that this idea of seeing the world through different eyes, this idea of finding what is beautiful and creative inside of ourselves, I don't feel like it's a nice thing. I feel like it's critical for exactly where we are in this highly evolutionary Renaissance era on Earth. Like we, as a species, if we don't tap into what's unique about ourselves and learn how to pull out of the collective, brain, and learn how to carve our own space out of it, we may as well be zombies. So I feel very strongly that this is something that's larger than me.
Okay. Yeah, I see. Completely makes sense. So I guess we can wrap up by just going back and looking back at your journey. What would you do differently now that you are where you are and you know the whole process? What was something that you regret not doing earlier?
I suppose having a weird response won't surprise you, given the context of our chat today. I can't regret anything, and I'm not just saying that like some high-minded philosophical bullshit. I really mean that, Ani. I feel like nothing is wasted. Every part of the journey is important. But one thing I guess I would say, if I could rewind and do something, it would be I would pay more attention to the value of what I had. I would focus on it. I wouldn't waste as much time. I feel like these things take the time that they take, and I have to be incredibly patient with it. But looking back at it, I wouldn't have wanted to rush the process, but I would have given it more focus. I would have actually cut things out and spent more of my energy and my attention, my precious time on this earth, which is so limited. I would have spent more time earlier on really trying to find out what this is all about. Aside from that, I don't really have any regrets.
Okay, I see. Well, since I tend to think that my audience is very similar in a sense that I think they will resonate also with your brand message. And, there are lots of weird people among us listening to this podcast. Where should they go in order to learn more about your tribe and join it eventually?
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Well, the easy way is just go to blessedaretheweird.com. All one word, blessedaretheweird.com. And, there's, right there, you can download a sample of the book. I think it's the introduction in the first 2 chapters. Just name an email and get an immediate PDF so they can take a look at the book. And you can also find the Facebook page, and you can find me on Instagram and all these other places there. So that's probably the easiest way to do it.
Okay, so blessedaretheweird.com. So we'll check it out. I have the copy of the book, so thank you very much. I will go through it and provide feedback when I read it very soon, hopefully. So thanks a lot for coming over. It was a really interesting story because why I like it so much is because it was completely opposite from what the usual experts are teaching us. So, I mean, it looked like a completely different thing, completely opposite of what we're supposed to do. And it's nice because I love when these weird and unconventional strategies, when they are not even strategies, they just happen. That's like the beauty of it. So thank you very much for coming over. I really appreciate your time, and I'm sure we got lots of value from it.
Well, thank you, Ani. And by the way, I love talking to you. You have an amazing British accent, which I think makes you sound so smart. So it's been very fun for me. I don't get to do that very often. And I just want to just leave you and all of us and myself with this last thing. Like, I really feel like we are in a time on Earth when it's time to redefine what normal is. It's time to redefine what success is. So, and it's a challenging path to walk sometimes, but it's so worth it. And so I'm just really grateful that you brought me onto your show, and I'll be delighted to share this interview with, of course, everyone in the weird tribe. I'm sure they'll love to meet you too. So thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you. Well, it seems like that's all that I had for you today. I truly hope that you enjoyed the interview. I appreciate your time you spent with us. And if you're liking the podcast, please make sure that you subscribe to it so you don't miss an episode, and leave a review because it really helps grow the podcast and have more listeners whom we will be inspiring and encouraging and helping out grow their own brands. So if you know people who you think would benefit from the podcast, let them know about it, let them know it exists, and recommend them to come over and join our team of listeners. Meanwhile, blessed are the weird. Keep being such.